back to our channel. Super excited today to have a high school classmate of mine who I've actually lost contact with for the past 5 years. But thankfully, we've had this opportunity to reconnect. He's going to be joining me in Pennsylvania. He's starting the MD PhD program at Pitt CMU this summer. So really excited to welcome Brandon to the channel and for him to have the opportunity to tell us about his story and his own path.
Yeah, great. So the first thing that we kind of wanted to talk to you about, Brandon, was sort of like how you navigated sort of being pre-MD PhD or deciding to do MD PhD in college. It would be great if you could talk to us a little bit about kind of your college journey and sort of how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so thanks both of you for having me on today. Really excited to be here and talk about my path and journey to starting MD PhD. I sort of have a very non-traditional path, and hopefully I'll be able to highlight different aspects on the journey that I took. So as Kenneth said, we knew each other about 5 years ago in high school, and so out of high school I ended up entering community college, and I did community college for about 2 years. And during that time, I really, for one, did not know what I wanted to major in, first of all. I was very lost in terms of that aspect. And second, I had a glimpse of that I wanted to be a physician, but I had really no clue what a physician scientist training program was. And so most of the activities I was pursuing during community college were focused on me as a pre-med. And I really was not doing a ton of the traditional basic science research that a lot of the incoming MD PhD students are doing to prepare for their particular training program when they enter. And so I was doing a lot of clinical research at a cancer, this would be a tertiary care clinic. And it was mostly focused on clinical trials, and performed a lot of retrospective chart reviews and learned mostly a bunch of statistical analyses. And that was the basis for a lot of my research the first 2 years, and was able to publish a few papers related to that. And I then, after finishing my first year, I learned sort of this whole realm of like biomedical engineering. I was interested in mathematics, physics, chemistry, and sort of really wanted a major that I could kind of merge a bunch of different disciplines together, because I sort of like the idea of being able to talk the language between a few different fields. And so that's when I kind of discovered biomedical engineering and applied to transfer to Ford University, and I applied to many. And ultimately decided to go to University of California, Irvine, to pursue my bachelor's of biomedical engineering there. And so I was there for 2 years. And while I was there, I sort of wanted to hit the ground running, because I felt that at a community college, you have a fantastic opportunity to really learn from amazing faculty that are there to teach you very individually one-on-one. The class sizes are extremely small. A lot of my friends who were at a Ford University never had necessarily the instructor interaction that I was able to get at a community college. And so I felt that my level of understanding of the material, especially during the pre-med course years, was very strong. And that really allowed me to have a great foundation for when I could go to the Ford University and focus on sort of, broadening out other horizons of my learning. And so when I got there, I really focused on trying to get involved in this whole realm of research, whether it be basic science or engineering. And I ended up kind of landing into both. And at the same time, trying to maintain, focus in my classes, because as a pre-med, everybody knows that GPA is extremely important. And so balancing and meshing the two was sort of my focus. And so I was involved with, a few different research projects that were basic science and engineering. And then maintain a high enough GPA that allowed me entry to MD PhD program later on. And I also had a couple gap years after finishing undergraduate. I had 2 gap years, and both of those were spent doing a lot of clinical research again, and also some basic engineering research too that we can talk about.
Yeah, right before we get there, we were wondering kind of where along that path did you make that choice saying that I think MD PhD is for me, and then if you at that point made any changes to align towards that goal?
Yeah, so like I said, I really didn't have a concept or a picture of what MD PhD really looked like when I was at community college. And so there I was just so fixated on becoming a physician, and that's why a lot of my work was geared towards what a normal pre-med would do in terms of like research activities. And then when I transferred to, Ford University at UCI, I got really involved early on. Really, the summer before I transferred, I started working in a research lab, and so I got really in-depth experience. The project that I was working on was with a rotation graduate student, and the lab that I was working at was very new to UCI. They had moved from a different university by the year before, and so there was just ample opportunity with plenty of funding to sort of devise my own projects while I was there. And the lab was heavily connected with a few different MD PhD students. And so talking to those students that were, doing other rotations in other labs, and also in that lab that I was working in, I sort of got this, I guess, this picture of like what an MD PhD program really looked like. And also to my faculty advisor who ran the lab at that time was an MD PhD too. And so that really helped kind of see what the career is like as an MD PhD, and then also what the student perspective was. And so my immediate faculty advisor is actually an MD only as well, but he ran a basic science component of the laboratory. And so I really got to see like what the research was that you can conduct as an MD, and then really what the supplementation of a PhD can give you. And I really just loved research. I did it for 6+ years, and that really solidified the need that I said, okay, I want to get a PhD as well on top of the MD, because I saw that really like true inherent value for my future education. And so I guess a time point would really be my junior year of undergrad, towards the tail end of it. Then I started picturing that I could go into that program.
That's awesome. It seems like you had like really great mentors and stuff that like helped kind of guide you towards that path, which I feel like is really important. Like having MD PhD role models can like really set people up towards that goal when like as you didn't really know that it initially kind of was a thing. In terms of the research experiences you did, I thought one really cool thing that you mentioned was that you did both kind of this like basic science research and bioengineering research, but then also clinical research. So could you talk a little bit about kind of like how you found both of the two experiences, like maybe compared to each other, and like what it's like to kind of exist in this very translational world, and then also this more basic engineering world, and kind of integrating the two?
Yeah. So, when I was at community college, I was really, solely involved in just clinical research. And so there, I really got to learn, very robust statistical analyses, how to conduct clinical trials, and at the same time kind of see from the industry perspective how you would bring a biomedical product or device from the aspect of a company to the clinic, and saw the true niche where commercialization makes an impact in terms of bringing technology to a patient. And so I knew that like I wanted to be in that space, but I really was like kind of yearning for more experiences that showed like the preclinical efforts to bring it to the patient. And so that's like where the validation of like basic science engineering comes. And so I really wanted that when I got to the Ford University, because there's a lot more opportunity to do that there. And so when I was there, I focused on sort of that type of research. And then when I worked with a lot of MD PhD students, they kind of had their foot in the door of both realms as well. And so just by, I guess, exposure or knowing people, I was able to also get involved in clinical research while I was at UCI. And then following graduation, I sort of maintained my foot in the door in sort of that more the engineering space rather than the basic science, but was also going back to doing clinical trials, because that's really what I enjoyed doing, is trying to bring a product from from the bench to the bedside per se, which is what the inherent cliche of MD PhD program is, but it's really true. I mean, we really have a special kind of opportunity to merge a bunch of different disciplines together and make an inherent impact. But I think commercializing technology and bringing that to the patient directly is the optimal way to do it.
The next thing that we want to talk to you about was sort of the process of applying to MD PhD programs, specifically as a biomedical engineering applicant, because I didn't personally do that, but I know just talking to other friends who I met in the process, that it can be like a little bit different, and not all schools offer biomedical engineering. So can you talk a little bit about maybe picking schools, and then also kind of navigating that as someone maybe pursuing a field that's not traditionally an MD PhD field?
Yeah, so uh, I I knew when I graduated, from UCI that biomedical engineering was a fantastic space for me and allowed like ample opportunity for different multidisciplinary learnings. But I wasn't necessarily sold on that I needed to pursue a PhD necessarily in biomedical engineering. And so when I applied for MD PhD, some programs I did choose biomedical engineering based off of the research, I guess, disciplines that were available at the schools. And then also I did apply to some more basic science engineering programs as well. And so I applied to about 28 programs. And I would say about a third of them were BME focused PhD programs. And a lot of the programs, when you apply, don't necessarily force you into keeping that PhD department for your entire journey. You have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can change as long as there's a program offered at that school. So don't feel that if you apply in as a biomedical engineer and you get accepted as one in an MD PhD program that you're stuck with that for your entire journey. You can kind of navigate and choose your own path. But the reason why I was flexible in terms of changing between biomedical engineering or a more basic science approach was I'm very focused on finding good mentors and also projects that interest me. And so a lot of the application season was spent sort of reaching out to people in different departments at different schools, engaging interest in their projects and then seeing what was available during the application season. And then that gave me sort of an indication as to the atmosphere of the university, what type of collaborations are available, and simultaneously, if that department is potentially a good fit for me, given the research opportunities that are available. And so I think the training that you get as a biomedical engineer and undergraduate really kind of prepares you to do a lot of different things because you can talk the language of so many different disciplines. So I also applied into like immunology and pathology, and I think some biochemistry departments based off of experience that I had. And I think that it turned out, fine. I ended up kind of doing Pitt at first as pathology, actually, but am now leaning towards, biomedical engineering as a PhD department, just given background and now kind of changed interest now that I'm starting.
So thank you for sharing your diversity of experiences that have led you to this point. When you're assembling your application, did you ever feel like it was difficult to tie together a narrative? Or if it was relatively easy for you, how were you able to navigate combining those interests into a narrative, into an application?
That's a good question. I think for me, my interest has always been focused on sort of building, putative technologies that can either make an impact in the diagnoses or therapy for patients in the chronic disease setting. So my interest has always been in, mostly cancer or neurodegenerative diseases. And in that case, there's just a huge inherent need for early detection biomarkers, responsive therapy biomarkers, and therapeutic technologies that can navigate drug delivery to the brain, for instance. And so my narrative has always been focused on building technology and translating it from the bench to the bedside. So I really didn't find it necessarily difficult, just given the experiences I had that kind of shaped that pathway for me.
Going back kind of to what you were talking about in terms of finding mentors and you were looking around at different MD PhD programs, would you say that there was anything different in what you considered in wanting in a graduate school mentor versus maybe an undergraduate mentor?
Yeah, so I guess I'll talk a little bit about my undergraduate mentorship. I think that's kind of important in terms of how it shaped my picking for looking for a graduate mentor. So an undergraduate, my projects were very much on my own, just given the mentorship style that my mentors had. So I really had a lot of free reign in terms of the projects that I was given. And so the lab that I spent the majority of my time in, the project that I was put onto was initially started by a rotation student. And eventually I took over the project after the first quarter and ran with that project for the entirety of my undergraduate time. And so I had sort of direct communication with the PI or principal investigator and ran all the assays on my own. I devised the experiments on my own. had meetings with him regularly to discuss experimental design. And so there's really like not much like intermediary between me and somebody else that then communicate to him. It was a lot of individual time spent just between us, and a lot of flexibility on my own. And that's like really what I appreciated, was having the ability to think for myself, to read literature on my own, but also at the same time to have somebody who's knowledgeable enough that can then kind of go back to you and say, well, I think you should look into this, or you should think about this. And then that would kind of signal to me, well, I didn't do my homework enough, or I got to go back and think these experiments through. And so now, and I thought for me that was like the best mentorship style, because I'm a very independent person. And so having, somebody who kind of gave me free reign, and also at the same time my own projects, was like the best thing. And it showed, like I was able to, get a couple publications that were first author out of that lab. And that really kind of gave me confidence in myself as a researcher, and definitely that I can handle graduate school, especially like graduate level research. And so when I was looking for kind of a graduate mentor now, it was really kind of looking for one, a lab that kind of has that same type of mentality in terms of the mentorship style. So somebody who gives their students more opinion or voice in devising projects, and also at the same time sort of giving free reign to allocate your time. 'Cause at the same time, while I was an undergraduate, I also had other responsibilities as well, like being in clinic, and then also at the same time, extracurriculars too, like clubs. And I was also involved in student government. And so I sort of, in graduate school, you'll need the opportunity, if you're an MD PhD student, to be in clinic. So having a mentor who understands time obligation is really important. And then one that wants to kind of foster a supportive environment for you in terms of, helping you with publications, grant applications, and has had a kind of a track record of success for students with that, I think is really important. So that was sort of my mindset of looking into kind of a mentor. And I think project is important too. And so if you have a project you're not necessarily passionate about, then I kind of, that you have a great mentor, but I don't know necessarily if you're going to be excited to be there for so long. So I kind of ideally have been looking for both.
That makes a lot of sense. Kind of similarly on the topic of choosing, like, why did you end up deciding to do the Pitt Carnegie Mellon program? And did you have any sort of trepidations about doing the West Coast to East Coast transition after being in California for so long?
Yeah, so, I've been in California for my entire education. And so I've really seen sort of the ecosystem environment, what's here. And I think it's fantastic. And I think that you really, get such a unique opportunity to go to an institution that kind of has a program that allows you ample access to both resources. And that's really what attracted me to the Pitt CMU program, was as a biomedical engineer, having access to, world-class engineering facilities at Carnegie Mellon, and at the same time, having robust, clinical training experience at University of Pittsburgh, along with the partnership that they have with, UPMC. Was very attractive. I think now it's difficult to know. I'm still currently in California, given the COVID-19 situation. I'll be moving in a couple months, but so far, I think the transition will be fairly smoothly, given the resources that are available for students to make those long transitions, and kind of get on that journey. But I think the interview process was highly important for me selecting that program. It was not on my radar until the interview process. And that's when I really decided that program was a great fit for me, personally, academically, et cetera.
Yeah, that's the thing with COVID-19. Like, if interviews stay virtual, I fear that a lot of students will be unable to get that feel for fit during the interviews. That the interviews give when students are there interviewing. Because, like, for me, after I interviewed at Penn, I knew Penn was the institution for me. So I canceled the rest of my interviews. I sent a letter of intent. So I'm kind of sad to see if the interviews go virtual. Obviously, if revisits can come back online by the time next year, to be in person, we'll see. But yeah, interviews are as much as a chance for the institutions to get to know you as you are get a chance to know the institution.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's going to be paramount for students to, if it is going to be entirely virtual during the next interview cycle, that students really reach out to the programs ahead of time, sort of beginning as soon as they have an interest in their MD PhD program, and especially reach out to graduate mentors at those programs to kind of Skype with them and see if that school is a good fit for you based off of research interests and fit. And it's not going to hurt to reach out to students that are there at the institution already, who can kind of give you a clue into what is going on. And I think it's especially important maybe to talk to students who are immediately transitioning into the university too, especially given COVID-19, because it'll give you a sense of the type of support that the university provides to their students during these difficult times.
That's a really great point. Sort of on the topic of COVID-19, like how has that kind of affected what you've been doing? Did it cause your gap year to get kind of cut short? And I know you mentioned you're doing a virtual rotation right now. So like how is all of that going and like fitting in with what maybe you expected would be kind of like the transition to MD PhD?
Yeah, so I originally planned to be in Pittsburgh actually now, but with COVID-19 it got pushed back a couple months. Luckily the rotation advisor who I had originally decided to rotate with, really when I decided Pitt was the program for me, was very flexible and amenable to a remote rotation, and that really gave me a clue as to that the university is having a very good response to this current pandemic, and so most of the research now has been entirely remote, but I have been involved with sort of other projects that are COVID-19 related, specifically. And so about 2 months ago now, one of my colleagues and friends reached out to me that he kind of had this interesting idea where he wanted to develop a digital contact tracing application. And so I remember getting a 2 a.m. text from him, and he had this really strange idea originally, and I slept on it. I woke up and I was like, wow, that's actually not a terrible concept, and so we spent some time kind of thinking it through and sending a bunch of texts and calls back and forth, and he's a fantastic computer programmer who's making a move to medicine actually, and so he really felt compelled to kind of have this like public health response using his skills, and I was there to very kind of support him ancillary in this pursuit, and I, with him, along with another MD PhD student who we mutually know and that has mentored us, for a couple of years now, we're kind of, working on this project together and, building this contact tracing application. We were able to publish a paper on it, which I believe was like the first paper out there on digital contact tracing. And there's now been, a few other, papers that have, decided to pursue this avenue. Definitely there's a lot of applications that are out there right now, especially with MIT developing their technology and also the Google Apple partnership. And all these different technologies are using different platforms to, contact trace individuals. But it seems like more of the states are looking for a manual response given the current environment and privacy protections associated with the digital platform. And so it's difficult to launch necessarily, but I think it was a great opportunity to see how to potentially quickly translate technology to, improve health. It really changed my perspective on what the role of a physician scientist is, definitely, and sort of kind of remobilize my thinking and efforts to, COVID-19, and thinking towards, how can we rapidly innovate technology and form large collaborations, very quickly.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like, I guess like the one silver lining of COVID, I think, and like it affecting our MD PhD training is that it's really making us rethink sort of how medical systems are set up and how we can kind of innovate and hopefully bring the medical field forward outside of like the obvious like disparities and limitations that COVID-19 has kind of exposed.
Yeah, definitely. I very much agree with that. I think for MD PhD, COVID-19 has sort of been this like first opportunity that students kind of get to seeing, what an MD PhD can really do and have an impact in, just because of the fact that as a PhD, you don't necessarily have direct clinical contact, but as an MD, you don't necessarily have that robust, research training. And so given that you get both as an MSTP or a new PhD student, COVID-19 kind of gives you that first opportunity to see, how you really need and want to do it during this time.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what you were saying earlier about as a biomedical engineer being able to speak multiple languages. I feel like as an MD PhD, you also kind of get that like clinical language, but also that more basic science, immunology, pathology language that's really important right now as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
So,
with that, I was going to say, do you have anything to close? But clearly Maya has a question, so Maya should definitely ask the question.
yeah.
Go for the question.
So kind of just wrapping things, so it's pretty similar to Kenneth, but kind of just wrapping things up, like, is there any advice that you would give to people who are watching our channel and may resonate with parts of your journey, or just kind of want to hear what you think in retrospect, looking back on your journey to starting an MD PhD program?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my journey was, very, unique and different compared to a lot of the other students who I met on the trail. I think going to community college is definitely one aspect of the journey that kind of, was different from, I saw myself as from, my peers that I had on the trail. And definitely taking a few gap years was different, but also has become more and more common in the more recent years. But I think as you're sort of, depending on whether you're in a traditional path or a non-traditional path to MSTP, I think maintaining an open mindset to pursuing both programs is really important. I've met a lot of people who were initially PhD and then wanted to get the MD because they saw the benefit, and I've met a lot of people who were initially MD and then decided to PhD because they saw the benefit. And so maintaining an openness, depending on what your interests are, to maintain a double doc or the dual degree, path is, I think, really important, number one. And number two, I think, having an interest to, want to kind of step out of your comfort zone and be in a new environment is also different and important too. We all kind of get comfortable and want to, do sort of a very singular, mindset, but, being open to not only new opportunities, but also, new responsibilities, especially as, starting a physician scientist training, now is the perfect time to, kind of explore outside interests and gain new perspectives from other people who have, done it before you.
Awesome. It was really well said. I want to thank you for sharing your journey with us thus far. We're super excited to see what you will do next along this long journey. Yeah,
thanks. And then if anybody has questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I think you guys are dropping my social media in the description box. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll link all of Brandon's contact information below. And we'll probably also put in the video. So just stay tuned if you want to contact him.